Welcome everybody to my channel. I'm really excited to show you the autumn orchard folio that I made for Country Craft Creations. I love how vibrant these colors are, and there will be a tutorial that follows. I will tell you that there's one spot where I give the wrong measurement and then I go back and tell you the right one. I actually tell you one that's too big, so at least if you don't catch the mistake, you can always cut down the paper. So watch it through, have a notebook, and then write down the measurements, and then you'll be good to go. This was a quick folio. You can make it in a day. I wanted to try something a little bit different, so I do have a split cover. So there's actually two pieces to the front cover, so it's like kind of remind me of a door, kind of like a horse stall, you know, how the top will open and then the bottom stays closed. Anyway, this is, like I said, Autumn Orchard. Some of these things are from my stash, but the majority of it you can get at the store. Like, I don't know if you can see, but there's little bows with some like real fine twine. That's from Country Craft Creations. I have a glue thing here. Obviously the paper, the flowers are from my stash. The seam binding is from the store. So here's the back. It's a 1-inch spine. And I know that the book is 8.5 tall, but now I don't remember how wide it is. So let me check. 5 1/4 is how wide it is. Okay. So let's go through a walkthrough so you can decide if you're interested in making one for yourself. It is a tie closure on the side. Plus I did use some magnets to keep it closed. So to open it, we're just going to undo the bows on the right hand side. And like I said, you can open the door on the bottom separate, or you can open the top separate. Okay, so on this first page I used a graphic 45 tag that I had in my stash, but you can obviously, Tammy sells graphic 45 tags. This just happened to have the word Imagine on it, and then I did have my own green glitter paper. It was really cheap that I got somewhere. It might even be from school, I don't know. But and then the other side, I wanted to add a little bit of color. That goes in this pocket right here. And then down here is another graphic 45 tag. This one said Celebrate. And again, this glitter paper is from my stash. So then I just have a side pocket here that slides into perfectly. On the right hand side, I have a angled pocket, and then I just put some of the cut aparts inside. This is one of the cutouts that says Autumn Splendor. More of my glitter. So anytime you see glitter paper, it's from my stash. Okay. I just put a couple of cut aparts in there. Just put a little piece of paper down here at the bottom. This one says Autumn Orchard, and stuck those in there. This opens to the left and to the right, and I just kind of left those plain so you could add pictures. No pockets or anything. And then when you open it, there's a place for pictures here. That glitter. And then this is a little piece of the glitter paper that I just put a tag in, and I just kind of put it off to the side. And then this is just a pocket, and I just cut some of the paper and put that on a piece of black Artisan. And then it opens again, and this is a pocket. So I put some of the cut aparts in there, and then I just took a piece of black paper and folded it in half. I don't show this in the tutorial because I just, like I said, I folded a piece of paper in half and then just decorated it with some paper. And then on the back, and then that just goes right here. This is a magnetic closure. In the center, I have a waterfall. It's magnetic closure, and I did put paper on the fronts, and then every other one I did glitter. And the backs are all plain. Okay. And that just does that. And then that's all there is to it. That's my folio. I just wanted it to be real simple. I don't have a whole lot of fall pictures. I have some from a pumpkin patch, but if you're interested, you guys, you can make it in a day. So go ahead and continue watching the tutorial. Like I said, have a notebook ready for the measurements and enjoy. This paper, remember, Country Craft Creations, they have their own line of paper now. It is fabulous. We are going to start with the cover, and I did some already off camera, but I'll show you how to do the main wrapping if you're not familiar with the wrapping style that Tammy Merrill introduced us to. Let me give you some measurements of chipboard and the paper for the covering of the chipboard. So I wrote it down on a sticky note. You might want to get a little notepad to write things down. The chipboard sizes, you're going to need 2 that are 1 by 8.5. Those become our 2 spines. You'll want to put an adhesive on the back. I don't use a wet glue. You do probably want to use the Scor tape. I have the Scor tape sheets that I put on here, which makes it handy. You'll need 2 that are 5 1/4 by 8.5. That's this size. Again, on all these chipboard pieces, put your adhesive. You'll need 1 that measures 5 1/4 by 5 1/8, and I've already wrapped that one. That's what it'll look like. And 1 that's 5 1/4 by 3 1/4, and that's what I've already wrapped. Okay. So get your chipboard pieces cut, and then you're going to want to get your cardstock to wrap these pieces with. I'm using the Artisan, of course, because it's the best paper out there. It's got a linen base, so there's it's a little bit more durable. You can score it without any tearing. Sometimes in the winter when it's dry you might see a little bit, but not. I have never really had an issue. The cardstock then for the cover pieces, you'll need 2 that are 7 1/4 by 10 1/2. So that is 1 inch larger on each side. The spine pieces you cut a little bit different. Those you're going to need 2 that are 4 by 10 1/2. We do a 1 1/2 inch border on the sides and a 1 inch at the top and the bottom. So that's why those are a little bit different. To wrap the piece of chipboard that was 5 1/4 by 5 1/8, you're going to need a 7 1/4 by 7 1/8 piece of paper. And then to cover the 3 1/4 by 5 1/4, go with 7 1/4 by 5 1/4. Okay. So like I said, I have already wrapped some. So that's what the main pieces look like. This is what the spine piece will look like. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with the basic covering of a piece of chipboard. And so we're going to take the piece that measured, the cardstock piece that was 7 1/4 by 10 1/2, and I went ahead and put the 7 1/4 across the top of my scoreboard. We do a 1 inch border. So if you have purchased the the border pieces that are made out of acrylic from the store, it makes it super handy. If you don't, go ahead and to me it's easiest just to cut it from chipboard to have them handy all the time, or you can just use a ruler too. So I placed the 1 inch at the top and at the side. I'm going to go ahead and take off the backing of my Scor tape sheets. Just peel, see how easy that is just to peel those off, and then I had to kind of piece it a little bit, so I'll take the backing off of that too. Could you try again? Siri's talking to me. And then I'm going to peel that off. Okay, so just stick that on the paper, butt it up against the side and the top of those spacers. You want to turn it over and give it a good burnish so that it's laying down nice and flat. You then want to bend it up and over so that it can get its natural crease there and make it easier to wrap. And then go ahead and take your burnishing tool and just give it a good burnish so that it has that permanent crease. And you're doing that to all 4 sides. Now some people do their corners differently than how I do them. I still do the mitering at an angle, And so I happen to have a tool that helps me, because when you cut your paper at an angle, you don't go straight to the chipboard here. You have to leave a little bit of space. Now, if you're one of those people who cuts out the square, you can go right to the chipboard. I just like the look of the angle. So I'm just going to place this here. And then this tool just gives me the exact amount of space that I need, or the extra paper I need, so that it will cover my corner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all 4 of my corners. Okay. So I am now going to use the 1/4 inch score tape, and I'll put it around the perimeter of my chipboard and the perimeter of my cardstock. Once you have the score tape on, you do want to make sure that you burnish it so that it has a good stick to your chipboard and paper. You don't want it to pull up. So what I just take my burnishing tool and go around, make sure that I give it a good burnish, and now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the paper. I'm just going to put the score tape at the very edge of my black paper. Black is kind of hard for me to see on my score mat here. One more here. Now this is exactly what you will do with all of your pieces except for the 1 inch by 8.5 inch pieces. Those we're going to do something different. So I start with my long sides, and I am going to place a bead, or actually a line of art glitter glue right up against the chipboard, and that's going to help the paper stick to it so that it has a nice smooth edge. And then I do put some art glitter glue in between my chipboard on the cardboard, or excuse me, on the cardstock, so that it just has more stick to it and more adhesive. I like more is better to me. And then when you bring it up and over, just make sure you really flatten that out. So I kind of give it an up and out motion with my hands. Then I take my burnishing tool. Oh, you guys, I'm so dumb. Let me show you what I forgot to do. And then I go ahead and do it on the sides. So I probably should have taken off these side pieces so that they don't stick. Oh, good. No problem. This should come off before, just so you don't accidentally glue those white pieces down. I'm going to go ahead and do the next long side. I'm going to take off the backing of my tape. I'm going to place the the art glitter glue right up against the chipboard. Let that soak in a little bit. Place it between the chipboard and your score tape that's on your cardstock. Bring it up and over, smooth it out. The covers are so important, you guys, that you keep them nice and neat. That's the first thing people will see, and so you want to take the extra time to make sure everything looks nice. It drives me crazy when I can see chipboard through someone's cover. That's avoidable. Now, because I'm using black, if you were to see chipboard, just get a black marker. You can use a Sharpie, and I'm going to show you. We're going to use this here in a second, and that will cover that up too. That's with black. If you are using a different color, then we have to work around that. But I'm going to push these corners down and in so that it covers the corner of my chipboard. Now again, if you did the squares, you don't have to do that. Then I'll take the backing off of this piece. I still put the glue up against the chipboard and in between. Now I like to put my fingernail down there so that it stays pushed down when I bring it up and over. And then just burnish it again. and then I stand it up here, and I want to make sure that I give that a good press, and I do it one last time on the other end. Make sure I push the paper down and in so that it covers the corner. Glue on the chip up against the chipboard and in between your score tape and that chipboard. I like to hold the corners down, bring it up and over, and burnish. I just like the look of that angled corner. I know you don't see it much when you have your pattern paper on, but I still like it. And then I'm just burnishing the edge. That's what you do with all the pieces except for your spine pieces. So now I'm going to show you what we do with the spine pieces. Now the cover of our book is a little bit different than a normal cover that I do. So go ahead and get your 1-inch chipboard piece, and then the cardstock for that is 4 by 10.5. Now, because we're doing our book a little bit different, I think it's going to be better if we take a black Sharpie or marker and go on the edge of our chipboard, just on the long sides, so that if by some chance we see a little bit of chipboard, it's going to be black and it's going to blend in. And I'm doing that because the front cover is split, and so I have to split the paper, and I don't want you to see the chipboard. It'll make sense in a minute. So go ahead and place that 4-inch side across the top of your scoreboard, and now the spacers we use are the 1 inch at the top, okay, and then we use a 1.5-inch spacer on the side. Again, you can just use a ruler and measure, or you can have your template made out of chipboard so that you have a 1.5 and a 1-inch piece to help. So go ahead and take the backing off of your spine piece here. And we're going to place that up against the top and the side spacer. And we're going to push down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my spacers away so that they're not in the way. Let's go ahead and burnish that on the back just so we have a good stick. Alright, so just like we did the other ones, we are still going to go ahead and bring it up, the chipboard up, and then bend it over that paper so that we can get a natural crease, and then go ahead and take your burnishing tool and just give it a little pressure here just to make it more pronounced. And then the last side. So this one I don't cut, the mitering is a little bit different. So where your paper's over, when you creased, you have this, I have a rectangle. I'm going to cut that at a diagonal and cut off a triangular piece like so, and I'm going to do that to all 4 corners. Cut it at an angle. And I'm going to go ahead and toss that extra. So I like to take my burnishing, another one of my burnishing tools, or my bone folders, and I like to run that up against the chipboard on the opposite side that we were working with, just to give it a good crease so that our covers will open and close easier, so you'll see a pronounced edge. So on the inside, you don't have to use score tape. I just put a little piece here on the short ends and one here, and that's the only score tape I use. I use glue on the rest of it. So we're going to end up folding this whole piece over the chipboard, this whole trapezoid. So you're going to need glue up against that chipboard piece, but also along that whole trapezoid section. Okay. Go ahead and take off the backing of your score tape. And now we bring that up and over, and we're going to press that down and kind of get it in around that chipboard. Flatten that down. Let's do the opposite end the same exact way. And you're going to do this to the other spine piece also. You don't really need the black marker on the edge for both spine pieces. You just need it for the one that's going to be next to the front cover, but you can do it to both if you've got it out, doesn't matter. Bring it up and over, press down, make sure it hugs that chipboard piece, and burnish. Okay, so we do want to slightly miter so that when we attach our covers, you don't see any sticking up over the tops. So you rest your scissors on the chipboard and cut at an angle. Scissors up against the chipboard, cut at an angle so that you have that, and do that on the other side as well. So it's just slightly angled. Alright, so do all of your chipboard pieces, and then you're going to be putting it together to form your cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. You might need to pause the video just so you can get caught up. I'm going to do my back cover first. So I didn't put black ink on the edge of this one, so that's why I'm going to use this piece. Alright, so you're going to rest your two pieces of chipboard together so that this extra paper is to the raw side. But to adhere it, it's easier to flip it the other direction, like so. Okay, so let's work with it where we see the chipboard totally covered. I like to put score tape on the very edge of that wing. I don't put the score tape all the way to the chipboard, but pretty close, almost exactly to it. And then I put one in the center, and then I fill in the gaps with glue. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take the backing off before I put the glue on. And if you have any tape hanging over the edge, just use your finger to curl it over so it doesn't hang over the edge. Okay, so now I just like to put a little bit of glue in between here. And maybe just a hair on the actual glue, or on the actual tape. You can butt it right up against the chipboard. And then you're going to turn it over and burnish it real well. All right, we are going to adhere the next large piece on the other side of that spine, so it looks like a regular cover so far. So I'm going to flip this over. Once again, I'm going to put my adhesive on there. Now, as I'm making this, I had an idea of how I wanted the cover. I have no idea what I'm doing on the inside yet. I kind of design as I go, but I'm trying to decide if it's going to be an album or a folio. The difference being whether or not you have what do you call it? What do you call it on your spine? The oh, for crying out loud. It'll come to me. I can't think of the word right now. Oh my gosh. You guys, the older I get, the more I'm forgetting things like words and what did I go to the kitchen for? I don't know what the deal is. All right, so once again, I have a little bit hanging over, so I'm just going to bring that up. I'm going to fill in with some glue. Hinge. Thank you very much. It just came to me. In my head, I kept saying gusset, and I knew that wasn't right. If it has a hinge, then it's an album. If it doesn't, then we call them a folio. At least that's what I think. Okay. So you can butt this up right against the chipboard spine. I'm just going to put a little, so that gives me a little bit of wiggle time. Right up against it. And then we're going to press down and then turn it over and burnish it. I don't bend it until I let it dry for a while. Okay, so now we're ready for the next spine. This is the one that has the black on the edge of the chipboard. And so far we're going to do the same thing we did over here. This is going to be exactly the same. We'll attach it like so. It's on the left hand side that's going to be different because our cover is split. So we're going to have to do something extra on the left hand side. But I can do this part. So I'm going to go ahead and just put adhesive on one side. I have not made a cover like this. I just kind of thought about it. I've done pages kind of like what we're going to do for the cover, but I've not done the actual cover where it's split. Just something a little bit different so that the appearance of your albums don't always look the same. Taking off the backing. This is the little pokey tool I made for myself. Pink and green. Love it. Then this has a little charm that's got green on it. Okay, not that you care. I'm going to go ahead and put that glue in there. Just a little bit on the top so I can have some wiggle room. Turn your book over. Bump it right up against the chipboard. Press down, then I turn it over and give it a better burnish. The reason why we have the longer sides is so that it covers, it just lays smooth and it covers the 1 inch border we had on the other pieces so that it just doesn't have as much of a bump. Okay, so I want the smaller piece on the bottom of my cover. I want the larger piece on the top. Now I have to make sure nope, that goes this way. Okay, and we had to make this one a little bit shorter so that they wouldn't bump each other, because once you put the paper, the wrapping on the chipboard, it does make it a little bit bigger. But I'm going to measure up. We're going to have to do some cutting. So I'm going to place this up against my spine piece like so. And I'm going to take a pen or a pencil. It doesn't matter. What do I have? I have a pen, I guess. And I'm going to put just a little line where that would be. And I'm going to cut straight up almost to the chipboard, and then I'm going to kind of make an angle on each side. So it looks like that. Okay. I'm then going to place this on the bottom. So I'm going to just put adhesive on that little 3-inch section, that bottom side. Almost to the chipboard. Down at the bottom. And one in the center. Take that backing off. Throw that away. Fill in with just a little bit of glue. And I'm going to place it right up against the chipboard. Really check that bottom, that it's lining up with your spine. Turn it over and burnish it on there. So you can see that's how we're going to be able to open the doors separately, because we cut that. Now I'm going to place the large door. Now because it was so close in size, it was like, what was the chipboard? The chipboard that we're using for the top is 5 1/4 by 5 1/8. So you have 1/8 of an inch difference. So you want to make sure that the 5 1/4 side is going across this way, 5 1/4. So you can kind of line it up with your bottom piece to see if it's right. So if I have it on like this, I don't like, mine's a little bit long. When I did the practice, I'm gonna, oh, that's wrong. Oh, it's right. Duh, I'm freaking myself out. Okay, so it's going to go like so. So I'm going to place this up at the top. Get my piece ready. I'm going to turn this sideways by putting the score tape on. Take the backing. If you have that tape sticking over a little bit, make sure you wrap it around so that it doesn't hang off the edge. Now I'm going to turn this upside down. It's just easier for me. I'm going to bring it to the top. And I want this to line up, so I want to make sure I'm kind of looking at that bottom piece as well. Okay, looks pretty good. Now I'll flip it over and I'm going to burnish it. Alright, so we do want to cover the spine pieces. We're going to need a full strip here to cover, but this one we're going to have to cut into 2, and that's why I wanted that black, just in case when I put the piece of paper over the, I'll show you. Let me get the measurements for you and then we'll get started. For the spine to cover the chipboard, you're going to need one that measures 4 1/4 by 8 3/8. Can you see that? And the other one is 3 by 8 3/8. And I'll show you why one is shorter or not as wide. Let's do the one that is 4 1/4. That goes on the right hand spine over here. That does not, it's not connected to the split door. I did put adhesive on the back. I don't have luck with wet glue on this because I can see it and it kind of ripples for me, so I use the Scor Sheets, and we're going to place that right on top. And I look to make sure we have the same space at the top and the bottom, and on side to side we just want to make sure that these black wings are covered. So let me take off the backing. And go ahead and burnish that. All right, so on the chipboard piece, you'll notice you see some black. So we're not going to, I don't want to see a split. I guess I could split the paper. Well, this is what I had, this is what I'm going to do. I already got my paper ready. I'm not going to put anything on the left hand side. I'm just going to bring this to the very edge of the chipboard and have it go to the right. Okay, so that's why I have taken my black marker again, and I just want to, on the edge of the chipboard, just to make sure you don't see anything. You could, if you wanted, you could make it wider, the piece to cover the spine, and then just like we did where we cut a triangle out, you could do the same thing. But I'm just going to cover, go all the way to the edge of the chipboard, and then the excess goes to the right. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? That's what I'm going to do. So let me take off that backing. Make sure if you have any hanging over, any of the score tape, you just kind of wrap it around so you don't see it. All right, so I'm going to turn this sideways. It's just easier for me to do it that way. Now I'm going to look at the top and the bottom and just make sure it goes all the way to the edge of the chipboard. And then I'll burnish. So now we want to fold our book. So I'm going to get my tool here and just kind of, as I bring this up, kind of just tuck it into the crease there. Be careful if you're not using Artisan. You don't want to rip your paper. I mean, you have to be, if you're using Artisan, you don't want to rip your paper either, but it's a little bit more durable and strong. Okay. Now we're going to do the other side. So I'm going to flip it up and down. Just kind of guide it with my bone folder. So there's that side. And this side we just have to do it to the one piece right here. on the right side of the spine. And there we go. Okay, so we have this that flips and this that flips. So I'm going to use magnets and seam binding, I believe, to keep this closed, just to make sure. So I'm going to use the basic gray. These are the ones from, let me show you the full package. They look like this. You can get those from Country Craft Creations. And I'm just going to put one here and one here, just as a extra way to make sure it stays closed. And like right now you can see there's that gap. We want to make sure it stays closed. So I'm going to put magnets on, and then like I said, I'll still probably do seam binding. So let me get my magnets ready and get that going. All right, here are my magnets placed. And when it's closed, you can see it lines up much better. You can open one at a time, because I'm going to put a little waterfall here, then this one. But I still want ties. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is find the seam binding that we're going to use to tie one on the top and one on the bottom. I have to decide what paper I'm using first so that I know what color seam binding to get. But I did receive some matching, about 3 different colors of matching seam binding. So let's take a look at that real quick. So this is the paper. When I first started this, I didn't know if I was going to use black or brown, but there is like black words and stuff, and I really like using black. So, and like the black of the truck, I thought that would look sharp. So I have to decide what paper I want on the front. Is that truck? Oh, the truck might be a hair too big. Maybe. I could cut off part of it. Let's see. I'll do this off camera so I don't bore you. Based off of the paper I'm going to use, this is the seam binding color I chose. So I cut 4 pieces that are about 15 inches long, and I am going to get them wet and scrunch them up. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump the camera. So I just take one piece, like I said, they're about 15 inches. Spray some water in my hand, and then just kind of roll them in a ball. I'm going to do that to all 4 pieces. You need a color of seam binding. I'm sure Tammy has it in the store. She has a ton of different colors. I like the kind of aged look, or the worn look, so that's why I scrunch it up. And even if you don't choose to scrunch it up, it's going to get, if you're tying it in a bow, it's going to end up getting wrinkly looking anyway, at least in part of it. So might as well do all of it wrinkly looking. And the last one. Now, seam binding does fray at the end, and so I'm also going to tie a knot at one end of the seam binding. Okay, get my water out of the way. Oh, I hit the camera again. Okay, so I want the seam binding on the top, but I also am going to do it on the very back so that when I tie it, it will actually tie on the, I want to bring it so that it ties in the center where the spine is, rather than have it off to the side right here on the front. I want it to meet and tie in the center. So let's go ahead and tie a knot, and you can just eyeball where you're going to put your seam binding. I want it in the center of each of the front pages, but then I also, yeah, I do. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that through and make a little knot. I'm just going to trim a little bit off. Okay. do another one. I'll do all 4 actually, but I just tuck that in there like the beginning of tying a knot. I don't do it twice, I just do it once. One more. Ouch. Okay. All right, so like I said, I'm going to put it in the center of each of my front pages. So I'm going to lay down a piece of score tape about, if this is 3 inches, I want about 1.5 down. About there looks fine to me. This, the middle is about right there. How did that happen? Okay, so I'm going to do the front first, and then I'll put the back piece on. So I take the backing off of my score tape. And I'm just going to lay that down. Trim this off a little bit. And then I do take score tape and lay it down again. I also have this black tape. Let me see. That might be better. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. So I have this black tape. I don't even know. It's made by, it's duck masking tape, but it's black. And I'm just going to lay that on top of there to lay it down flat. If I can find the beginning of the roll. I cut way too much, but I don't need that much. Okay, just to make sure it doesn't come up. And I'm going to do the same thing at the top here. I'm going to take off the backing. I should have burnished that better. Okay, get rid of that extra fringy here. And then I will take masking tape and let me cut it. And I'll just lay that down here. You can use score tape on top of it too, doesn't matter. Alright, so now that we have the front on, we can flip this over onto the back, and it helps line it up because we can see where it's coming. So I'm going to place score tape about right there. And right there. leave these out so I can make sure I line them up as close as possible. And okay. Get my masking tape. Just to make sure it lays down flat. Almost done with the closure, and then we can start looking at covering the cover. Think about what we're going to put on the inside for flaps and waterfalls. I probably will have a lot of waterfalls on this book, in the side of this book. Oh, that ripped. Oh well. Alrighty, there we go. And so, just so you can get an idea of what it'll look like when we tie it, you know what, I might have to trim the seam binding a little bit if it's too long. I didn't even think about, yeah, it's way too long. But I want it on the spine for the bow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and cut. I have way too much. That's okay. Better too much than not enough. All right, so there's that. So now we're gonna start looking at the cover or the decorating part on the outside. I'll decide. Do I want to do that? Okay, anyway, we'll come back and start putting the insides in with pockets and waterfalls and all that kind of good stuff. I'm going to start the flips for this page right here. So I hope you can read this, but I'll go over it. So when I write myself my notes, this is how I know where to score. So you're going to need one piece at 5 3/4 by 8 1/2. And on the 5 3/4 side, we're going to score it 1/2. So this is my 5 3/4 by 8 1/2. So I'm saying put the 5 3/4 at the top, and we're going to score it 1/2. That's why I draw that line and put 1/2. Okay. The next one you're going to need is 3 1/2 by 9 1/2. The 3 1/2 by 9 1/2 is going to be a pocket. So we're going to do 1/2 inch on each end of the 9 1/2 side. Ouch. And then 1/2 inch on the 3 1/2 side. We're going to have a flip that is 3 1/2 by 5 3/4, and on the 5 3/4 side we'll score it 1/2. And then the last one is a 4 3/4 by 5 inch piece, and you're going to score 1/2 inch on each side. So let's go ahead and get started and see what that looks like. I've already done the scoring, but I'll just do it real quick to show you. So the first piece was the 5 3/4 by 8 1/2, 5 3/4 across the top, scored 1/2. The 3 1/2 by 9 1/2, on the 9 1/2 inch side, scored 1/2, and at 9, so that you have a 1/2 inch score on each end. And then when it's on the 3 1/2 inch side, scored 1/2. On the 3 1/2 inch piece, put the 5 3/4 across the top, scored 1/2. And then the last piece was 4 3/4 by 5 1/2. You're going to do a 1/2 inch score on the 4 3/4 side and a 1/2 inch score on the 5 inch side. Okay, So let's go ahead and start burnishing our score marks, and we do need to do a little bit of mitering or tapering off here a little bit. So this is the 3.5 inch side piece. So I just want to trim those off just a hair so that when I glue them to the book, you don't see any overhang. And we're going to burnish that. Okay, so that will be a flip. The pocket, that's the 3.5 by 9.5. You want to cut out that corner where the lines intersect at an angle, and up at the top you want to miter, and you'll do the same thing on the other side. Cut out that square at the bottom by cutting at an angle. This was the 5 3/4 by 8.5. Let's go ahead and miter the 1/2 inch at the top and the bottom, and then go ahead and burnish that. I didn't burnish the pocket. And then this is going to be an L pocket. So when this is folded, I want this to be like so, and it's gonna we're gonna cut it at an angle here in a second. So this is 5 1/8 inches. Did I say 5 or 5 1/8? 5 inches going across this way. So my score is on the right when the 5 inches is across the top. Cut off that square in the corner at an angle, miter the top, and miter the bottom. Okay, and then you have to decide how you want your angle to be. I don't usually measure. I usually just put it in the cutter and put it at an angle that I think would look good. So I kind of usually go about 1 inch to 1.5 inches over, and then about 1.5 inches up, and then I just slice. So with my score on my right and the score at the bottom, I'm going to put that in my cutter, and I'm just going to angle it to where I like it. That's all I do. Let's see. You can draw in there if you want to. You know what, maybe that's what I'll do so that I can make sure I get the cut right. Do I want it like that? Do I want just a triangle? No. I think I want to go to the very corner this time, and then up about 1.5 inches. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. So it'll make more sense when you see that I want that corner. I don't see my line. There it is. So that's what my pocket's going to look like. I don't know if I like that. Maybe I want to, maybe I'll do, I don't like that. I can either cut it this way. No, I'm going to go from, I'm just going to make it a triangle. I don't like it. So mine will be a corner pocket like that. Changed my other mind. Alright, so let me get my scraps out of here. You can do any kind of pocket. You could just do a regular pocket if you want. It's up to you. Alrighty, so I'm going to start by adhering. This is my 5 3/4 by 8.5, and I've got my score on the right hand side because it's going to be attached to my book so that it opens like so. I'm going to put this flap so that the score is on the left, and I'm going to attach it to the left hand side, and I got to make sure that, yep, that's going to be just right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on. Come on, glue. There we go. All right. I'm going to turn it a little sideways. It's just easier for me to adhere it. I want to make sure it's straight. All right, burnish that. Wipe off any excess glue. You'll be covered with paper, but even so. Now, the reason why I am doing this is so that when you open this bottom door, you can also have another flap that will be opening the same way. And I just think that'll look good. I wonder if I did it too big. I might have done it a little bit too big. And then sorry, I'm talking to myself out loud. So then on this one, I know that my top door is 5, hold on, let me measure. 5 and an 8. So if I look, I want this to be about, so there's 5 and an 8. I want that. Yeah, this is too, I don't like how big that is. Oh well, too late now. That should, so I have about half an inch from the top. That's where I'm going to glue mine. A half an inch from the top. Okay. And I don't think that looks straight, so put glue on your 1/2 inch sides. About a 1/2 inch down is what I said I wanted. So that we have a little angled pocket so we can store some cut aparts in or pictures. Okay. So that will be like so. Then when you turn it over, I'm going to leave this page plain and just put places for pictures. So we can go ahead and glue that on. So it's going to go on the very right hand side cover when it's folded in, and we will glue it the 1/2 inch on the right hand side. Okay. Putting glue on that 1/2 inch piece. I'm going to turn my book sideways just so it's easier for me to line it up. Make sure everything's lined up, and it is. So I can burnish that. Now, as of right now, I don't plan on using anything to keep these flaps down. I think that once I have my pattern paper on, it'll be fine. So when I open this, I'm going to put the long pocket on the left hand side of here. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish because I didn't do that before. On all three sides. And you want to give it a dry fit to make sure it's the right size, the right length. And mine looks good. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that. Put glue on your 1/2 inch pieces. Okay. Again, I'm going to turn my book sideways just so it's easier. And I just got my hand all over in the glue. And I want it to go to the very edge of the page. Perfect. And then burnish and get rid of any excess glue that wants to squeeze out. Now, art glitter glue does dry clear, but you still want to get off as much as you can. It's kind of a awkward way to burnish it, but all right, so that's all that we're going to do there. We don't want it too thick because we want the magnets to still hook on. So this can help you lift that door. We'll have this, something in here. Oopsie. This will be a layout type pocket. So now we're going to work on these 2 pages right here. This is going to be a waterfall, and I also am going to probably put a flap here. So let me get my brain wrapped around what I'm going to do next, because I'm designing as I go, and I will be back. So this part of the tutorial is I'm going to do a waterfall here in the center, and I'm going to have a magnetic closure like so. But I'm not going to build the waterfall on this. I'm going to lay these 2 down, and then I'm going to put pattern paper, and then I'm going to place my waterfall on top, if that makes sense. If not, it will in a second. And I'm going to use 2 small magnets, the small ones on each side, so that it will stay closed. So these we want to glue down first, then pattern paper, then the waterfall. With the waterfall, here are the next sizes that you're going to need. I did 8 pieces that measure 4 3/4 by 5, and then the 4 3/4 will go across the top of our scoreboard, and we'll score it a half. 1 at 5 by 7 3/4. So that's the base I'm going to put the waterfall on, just to help me keep it straight. Excuse me. And then 2 that measure 2 1/2 by 5 1/4. And on the 5 1/4 inch side, we're going to score it 1/2 3/4. So all of the pieces that were 4 3/4 by 5, place the 5 across, place the 4 3/4 across the top. 4 3/4, score at a 1/2. So 4 3/4 across the top, score at 1/2 on all 8 pieces. The base piece, where did I do with it? I just had it. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. This measures, excuse me, this is the base, which is 5 by 7 3/4. And so this is what we're going to build our waterfall on. So we're going to be gluing these right on top of that, so it's easy to place in the folio without getting it cattywampus. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my scoreboard a little bit. So I just put this paper up into the corner here so that it won't move. And you don't miter these 1/2 inch pieces, you leave them the way they are. And we're just going to take it to the very top and side. And then you want to burnish it and get rid of any excess glue that came out. So now we leave this open and we put the next one and butt it up right against that 1/2 inch piece that we just glued down. Okay. And you just do this 8 times. So I want to make sure that's bumped up against my scoreboard so I get it lined up. And I'm putting this right up against that 1/2 inch that I just glued down. And I like to lay this down just to make sure they're lining up, and they are. Continue. All the way to the edge. Bump it up against the 1/2 inch you just glued down. Fold this down to make sure everything's still lining up and not having anything off to the side that shouldn't be. We want to make sure it stays centered. No excess glue on that one. Oh, I have 2 pieces there. That one looks off a little bit. There we go. All right, so keep doing that till you have all 8. I'm going on one of the 2.5 inch pieces. I put my magnets, and I'm going to wait to put the magnet on the other side until they're attached to the book. So I'm going to center these, and I'm going to go to the bottom of where this paper was, where we put where we covered the spine. So it's about 1/8 of an inch up from, let me bring it up closer. So I don't know if you can see where your paper ends here. That's where you want to line up your closure. I want the top to overlap on the bottom, so I want it to close so that the top is on the top piece is on top of the bottom piece. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this upside down, and I'm going to lay a ruler down just so I can remember my center point. The book is about 5 1/4, so I'm going to, so here we go. Just put glue on the 1/4 or the 1/2 inch piece. All right. So I'm going to keep that flap closed when I put the other one on so I can see how to line it up. And again, I'm going to just lay it down where the bottom of that paper is, like so. Okay. Go ahead and burnish that real well. So now you can attach the other magnets now that you see where they're going to meet one another. So take the backing off. we'll close it so we know where to put the other magnet. And then I like to go back and put some score tape over it so it doesn't shift. I'm just going to use my 1/8 on this. So now at this point you have to find what paper you want to cover the back piece with before we put the waterfall on. And so I'll cover mine, and then you just glue this, you center it because you have a little bit of space at the top and the bottom. I wanted to see the background paper, and then you just glue that down. Now if you want this last piece, when you lift it up, you could put a pocket or something down here if you wanted. Okay, all right, so let's get that pattern paper glued on and the waterfall. I'm going to move on to the two front pieces of the cover. I went back and I added another one to open on this side. I did make it a little bit shorter so that it doesn't bump into here. I made that 3.5 by 5 1/4, and I went in 1/2 inch on the 5 1/4 inch side. So that's what this measurement is, the 3.5 by 5 1/4. I just added another one here. As I was looking at it, I thought it would look better. Okay. So for this, we're just going to do a pocket here and then a pocket on the side. So you're going to need one that's 5.5 by 2.5. We're going to score on 3 sides because it's a pocket. And then the top one is 6 1/4 by 3. And again, we're going to score on 1/2 inch on 3 sides because it's a pocket. So let me make sure my measurements are right. 5.5. No, 5.5 by 2.5. I don't think. No, that's not true. It's not 3.5 by 2.5. 3.5. It's 4.5 by 2.5. 4.5 by 2.5 instead of 5.5. Because we're doing the pocket the other direction. Paper cut and ready. Okay, so there's that one, and then the other one that I said, and that one was right, was 4 3/4 by 5. No, I can't read my own writing. 4 3/4 by 3. I don't know if I said that right. I apologize if I didn't say it right. 4 3/4 by 3. All right, so I think it's already 3 inches. Yeah. 4 and... That doesn't make sense to me. Hold on, people. Don't cut anything yet. Sorry. Okay, it would have helped if I was looking at the right paper. I was looking at the wrong paper, so that screwed me up. So I apologize if you cut it. It is for, oh my God, 4 1/4. I'm so sorry. 4 1/4 by 2.5, and then we're going to score on 3 sides. I need to write a note on this video so you don't screw up. And then this ended up being 6 1/8 by 3. That's a mess, but I don't know if you, okay, sorry. Woo! So on the 4 1/4 piece, we score it half, 4 1/4, 4 1/4, 4 1/4, 4 1/4. I keep saying 4 3/4. That's wrong. 4 1/4 across. So half on each end with the 4 1/4 inch side at the top. I'm going to get this right yet. My gosh. 2.5 inches at the top, score at 1/2. It's a pocket. It shouldn't be that tough. Okay. So now we have 6 1/8 across the top. Score at 1/2. Turn it once, score it 1/2. Turn it one more time so the long side is at the top, score it at 1/2. My gosh. Okay. So because they're pockets, you take out that square in the corner at an angle. take out the square or the angle and miter the top of the 1/2 inch piece. Let's do that to the other pocket also. Take out that square corner and take a miter at the top. Okay. I think I'm trying to hurry too much, and that's why that happened. So go ahead and burnish your pockets. Now if you want a thumb hole, now would be the time to cut it. I'm not going to do a thumb hole on these, but you definitely can. And you're going to want to do a dry fit before you glue, just to make sure, especially with all the different measurements I've given you. So let's make sure this fits. Yes, it does. Whew, thank goodness. So we're going to glue that down on the left hand side with the door open, and then we'll have a tag coming out of here. And then this one gets glued this way. And you got to make sure that it fits right so that when you close this, it doesn't get in the way of your spine. Okay? So I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to leave this tape on my magnet because you won't see that when I put it on, and we'll put some decorative paper down, and so that magnet's fine the way it is. We don't have to take off the backing. So I'm putting glue on 3 sides of the pocket. Go ahead and burnish that on. I have a little glue coming out here. And now we're going to glue this one on like so. And we're already almost done. I don't have a ton of fall pictures, so I didn't need a really super big book. And sometimes you don't want, sometimes you don't want one of those really big ones. Sometimes you just want something fast and enough for 25 pictures or so. Okay. Right, so that's done. This is done. All we need to do is work with the right hand side, and I'm going to want another flap. This time the flap will be here. So let me get those papers ready, and I promise to give you the right measurements the first time, and then that's all we have to do for the construction of our book. So let me measure, and I'll be right back. All right, 2 more pieces. I'm going to not make this as detailed as I thought. So 9.5 by 3 and 4.5 by 8.5. So we're going to have a shallow pocket here, and then this will kind of look like an envelope when we're done. So I'm not going to do the extra flap. I know I don't have enough pictures. I have some from the pumpkin patch that when we used to take our kids, but I still don't think I have that many. So okay. Put the 9.5 inches across the top, score it 1/2, rotate it once, score it a half, rotate it once, score it a half. This one is 8.5, the 8.5 inch piece. So you're going to have it on the short side across the top. So the 4.5 across the top, score it 1/2. If you want to corner around those, you can. Let's put our pocket on first. Go ahead and miter the tops of your pockets and then cut out the square at an angle. Let's do a dry fit. Make sure that it fits right. Where's my, there it is. I'm going to go ahead and burnish this one too while I'm at it. I am going to slightly miter these. I don't know if I'm going to corner around mine yet. I might end up doing that. I want to make sure that this is the right length. It goes from one end to the other, and it's exactly right. And let me make sure this. Yep, I am going to corner around it. I like that better. I can tell just by looking at it. Like so. Closure can be magnets. If you want it to be seam binding, now's the time to put the seam binding on. I'm trying to decide what I want. Do I want seam binding? I kind of might. No, I'm not. Okay. I'll do a magnet or something. I've used more magnets than I normally do. I'm kind of stingy with magnets. Alright, so I'm just putting glue on the 3 sides. Make sure you don't go over so that you're into the spine. You got to be able to close that book. Oopsie. I have to lift it up to make sure. Yep. And burnish that on. And I'm going to turn it sideways and glue that on. I'm going to go all the way to the edge. And press. All right, yep, I'm going to put 2 magnets on here. I think I have 2 small ones left, and I'll put one on each end, and then it will close. So then now it's time to decorate. So I think that'll really show how cute that book really is. So let me decorate it, and then I'll show you the final book.